So this past week, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and pretty much the Cadillacs of the space have been doing some crazy numbers. However, there's this one coin that recently did 300%, so completely shadowed Bitcoin and Ethereum off. And what is that, you ask? Well, it's the graph. So let's go ahead and talk about what the graph is, how it works, and what we see in terms of pricing in the future. So the graph, starting off, is a decentralized protocol for indexing and querying data on the Ethereum blockchain. They do plan on doing different blockchains in the future. They're just starting off with Ethereum. Now what it does is it makes it much easier to query data that is otherwise difficult to query otherwise. I just said query and index a whole bunch of times. Let me go ahead and explain. Index in a sense where the graph is able to index smart contracts so that it's easier to read, both for humans, people who code, and for programs or scripts that need to, break down the code line by line, or string by string, data type by data type. And then query in a sense that it's just asking a question. Rather than a human, you're asking the smart contract a question. So you give it an input and you expect an output, or in coding language they call it, you give it an argument. And then the contract itself should give you the correct answer to whatever that argument is. And so if you're familiar with the CryptoKitties app, for example, you could ask it a question such as, how many CryptoKitties does a specific Ethereum account own? Or when was a particular CryptoKitty born? Again, those questions are really easy to answer and really direct because there are actual, as you can say, data types or functions that will tell you that within the CryptoKitty smart contract. That pretty much you put in the argument and it spits out the answer. However, where it gets difficult is going to be when you ask questions that aren't as direct. So like, who are the owners of the CryptoKitties born between January and February of 2018, right? Not as much of a black and white answer because the code has to sift through, all right, which CryptoKitties have been born, which of them have been born between January and February between this time period, and let's find out who those owners of those CryptoKitties are. So as you can see, you're asking it a whole bunch of different things that it might take quite a while for it to actually spit out the smart contract itself, right? And again, not to say that it wouldn't happen. However, it would take hours, even days for some of these apps to compute some sort of answer, for that. So the graph comes in and solves that by using a hosted service that indexes blockchain data. Those indexes, or subgraphs they call it, can be then queried with their GraphQL API that they have. But at the end of the day, the goal is to have the hosted service turn into a fully decentralized protocol with the same capabilities that it currently has. So as of now, it isn't technically decentralized, but it is open source, so they have that going for them. Now getting into how the graph works. The graph itself is able to index Ethereum data, pretty much smart contracts, using subgraph descriptions, or the subgraph manifest is what they call it. Now let me kind of repeat that again. The graph is able to index smart contracts using the subgraph manifest. Now you may be asking yourself, what is the subgraph manifest? Well, what it does is it defines a smart contract, it tells the indexer which events to pay attention to, and how to map event data to data that will be stored in the graph's database. So you can see the subgraph manifest as a blueprint for the indexer to follow. And you'll see who an indexer is later on when I go into it. But it's essentially the person that's going to go ahead and separate the data out. So you have to tell that person, what the smart contract's about, which events to pay attention to, and how to map event data to data that will be stored in the graph's database. Now there are a couple of different roles within the graph network. They are indexers, as I mentioned earlier, curators, delegators, and consumers, much like you and I probably. But all of them can provide services and earn income from the network proportional to the amount of work they perform and their GRT stake, the token in this case. So you can pretty much see it as like a little equation. So the amount of work you do plus the GRT stake equals the amount of income that you get, really. Now, in this case, we'll kind of break down each role step by step. So the indexer is going to be one of the most complicated roles. They're essentially node operators that stake their GRT tokens to provide indexing and query processing services. So as I mentioned, all they're really doing here is separating data to make it more legible, and they're making sure that when questions are asked, that it does come out in a quick and succinct manner, of course, because if it's going to come out in like a couple hours from now, then there's no point. They get query fees and indexer rewards for their service, and something to keep note is that they can be slashed for indexing incorrectly or giving wrong data to applications. So as you can see, the indexers are rewarded for making sure that their data is correct and is completely legible for both humans and applications to read. Next, we have curators. Those are going to be a little bit less, I guess you could say, technical. So curators can be subgraph developers, data consumers, or just community members who tell indexers which subgraphs to index. And they are able to earn a portion of query fees for selecting the highest quality data sources. So it's pretty much people who are telling the indexers, yo, do the subgraph first, because it's a higher quality subgraph, the smart contract's a little more important, and most likely, they'll be picking the people who are willing to pay more GRT to have their subgraphs or smart contracts picked. So next we have delegators. These are going to be pretty much one of the lowest technical role that you can have besides being a consumer. But pretty much all you are is a person who delegates stakes to indexers and gets GRT from those query fees and the rewards earned by that indexer. Like as I mentioned before, indexers get rewarded with query fees and indexer rewards. Delegators get a portion of that as well. So just in general, as you can see, there's 3 different roles. It ranges from the most technical all the way to the least technical. And again, to ensure the economic security of the graph network and the integrity of the data being queried, pretty much anyone can participate and stake using their graph tokens or, again, GRT, right? And the main thing is that GRT is used to allocate resources all within the network and, of course, to reward people for doing their job, which at the end of the day, that's kind of all we really want, right? Tokenomics is very important. Now, with all that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at the price now that we pretty much know what the graph does. So looking at the graph or chart, oh, I like that one. You can see it started off pretty cheap. I think it actually started off at 11 cents, not 20 something cents as it says here. And it went all the way up to about 73 yesterday from what I saw. And it's not going to show you 73 here because that wasn't the daily close. However, this is still a pretty thick increase. This is at least 300% just off this graph alone. And the main reason is because they actually launched their mainnet the other day, on December 14th, actually. Not to mention, a lot of these news outlets are starting to pick up on this coin. And that kind of goes to show how mainstream crypto is starting to get. Because in the past, you would never see Yahoo News or Forbes or whatever talking about these very small coins, even though there are bunches of different cryptos that do hundreds of percentages, thousands of percentages every day. You would never see them talk about a coin like this, kind of unknown. But Coinbase had added a GRT to their list, and so did Binance. So I guess it was no surprise there. But the question is, should you buy it now? And I'll be honest with you, just looking at this graph, I'm always a person to say never chase the hype. And I'll be honest with you, it's already dipping. And it's at rank 35 on CoinMarketCap, which is pretty impressive for a coin that came out technically about 6 days ago. Personally, I'm going to be holding off a little bit. I may wait for a little dip there. If it does dip back down, I don't think it'll go back down to 26 cents per se. But I do see the importance of the graph. As you can see what we were just talking about, for Ethereum, alone, it helps a lot, right? Mainly for developers and people who want to code on Ethereum, it makes it easier to make these centralized applications. Not only easier, but it makes it faster. So innovation can happen much quicker than it already is. So to me, that's very important in this space. And I think, the graph being what it is going to help just pretty much boost everything that's already happening, DeFi, and make things a lot more intricate and easier to use. However, what I'm really looking forward to as well is when they're able to expand off of Ethereum onto any blockchain. That to me would be really cool. And I think if you were to look at this coin as a potential investment, to keep that in mind, that, that's what you're going to want to look for at the end of the day. The expansion of the graph network. And to me, assuming that I will put some of my hard-earned bread into this, I'm most likely going to be doing it before that happens. I'll tell you that much. But am I putting it in right now at this point in time? No. 59 cents, I'm not putting it in right now. I'll be honest with y'all. I'll be honest. I may put some in at 30 cents. Hopefully it dips back down there and you're not watching this video and it's at already $10. I'd be really sad. But let me know down in the comments below. Do you have any GRT? Are you part of the network? I'll have an official comment down below that you can answer. But let's just ask that. Are you interested in the graph network? I think it's dope. Thanks for watching. By the way, I hope you learned something from this. That was my goal at the end of the day.